Hi everyone. So this is not a tarot video. This video I'm going to be reading Jan Moore's excellent articles published on June 8th, and then I'm going to which goes into why I think Harry and Meghan are manipulating Americans with the articles that they chose for his court case, his trial on phone hacking. I do think Harry and Meghan, everything they do is targeting the American audience that they want to support them. So let me just read her article here. So it says here, deep breath, are you okay? The Duke of Sussex was back in court on his second and final day of giving evidence. He entered the witness box just before 10:30, did a little neck roll, took a sip of water, and prepared for the ordeal ahead. Prince was still in his smart suit and had swapped Tuesday's purple tie with a snazzy silver one. But something else was different too, something more elusive. Did I detect a new spritz of lemon in his cocktail of complaints, a rousing grind of pepper on his ongoing beef? It was almost as if he'd been instructed overnight to answer questions with a simple yes or no and stick to the script. For God's sake. For example, he had a better response to the important question of when he had read the newspaper article in question. On Tuesday, he repeatedly told the court he couldn't remember, end of. Yesterday, it was, quote, I can't remember, but that is to suggest that the stress has been reduced and it hasn't been. Soon we were roving over evidence about his wild and crazy younger life, including an injured knee that delayed his entry into Sandhurst, his trips to lap dancing clubs, and his boozy playboy lifestyle, and his relationship with Chelsea Davy. Prince Harry, so very vague about so very much that happened back then, had a sudden illuminating jolt of memory. He argued that he did not go to a London nightclub called Amica once a month. Quote, I don't believe I was there that often, and doubted the newspaper's version of events. Quote, I don't see any quotes from a Lithuanian lap dancer who sat on my lap. However, we all know Harry by now. Give our guy a public platform, and it won't be long before he's complaining about his privacy. Although, to be scrupulously fair, this is a phone hacking trial and not an exercise in vengeance. Or is it? During his cross examination by Andrew Green, KC, acting for Mirror Group newspapers, Prince Harry revealed that he decided to bring the case after meeting lawyer David Sherborne in the south of France, sometimes known as a uh, sunny place for shady people. But of course, that is not relevant here. Or is it? Harry also revealed that part of his impetus for the lawsuit was a desire to do something about the abuse and hate that was coming towards me and my wife in recent years. Wah. So an exercise in revenge and punishment rather than one in justice and ethics, question mark. So that's what it is. In his witness statement, Prince Harry grandly described himself as someone who wants to save journalism as a profession and a soldier holding important values. Yeah, Harry wants to be seen as brave here. He wants to relive his days in Iraq, or his reputation from his days in Iraq. It would be simply crushing to discover that this warrior of morality was motivated even a little bit by less noble sentiments. Despite his new focus, it wasn't long before the prince was drifting far from shore again, answering the questions in his head rather than the ones he had just been asked, and taking any opportunity to expound on his general grievances to the judge. Quote, doesn't mean it's true, my lord, he would say. I highly doubted that, my lord, he would add. Mr. Green got a little exasperated at one point. Quote, could I just repeat what I said yesterday? This is about me asking questions, not you asking me questions, he said. So be it, sighed the KC after another dead end exchange with the prince. There was a discussion yet again about what was and what was not in the public interest. Prince Harry was asked to define the former and gave the matter some thought. Quote, "A life-threatening injury," he suggested. "I'm sure there are others." I'm sure there are. Again and again, we got a glimpse of the unique struggles of the young prince's cloistered life, a miserable sounding existence constrained by suspicion and privilege. He was chary of everyone inside this corral of distrust. He was ministered by people he variously described as, quote, my security, my point person, and even my police. Sometimes you have to wonder who on earth was looking after this lost motherless boy. At other times his lack of acuity is gasping. Towards the end of the day, the focus switched onto a news story about his breakup with Chelsea Davy, printed with the headline, "Hooray, Harry's dumped." "My lord, this was hurtful, to say the least," said the prince, adding that he found it a little bit mean that such a private moment was turned into a bit of a laugh. "You are not suggesting that they, the newspaper, were celebrating that you'd been dumped," said Green, incredulous. "Yes, I am. For me," said Harry, touching his heart with his fluttering fingertips, "as the subject or victim of this, to see that word used, this term is full. If only the newspaper sub-editor or anyone with a rudimentary grasp of grammar had seen on hand to explain the difference between Hooray, Harry's dumped and Hooray, comma, Harry's dumped. How can a man who came through an expensive education without knowing the basic rules of punctuation, or expect to single-handedly save journalism if he doesn't even know how a comma works?" When he had finished giving his evidence, Prince Harry took a seat in the courtroom for the rest of the day. How had it all gone? That morning, Mr. Green had asked him if it was true. He was brought back early from his tour of duty in Afghanistan. Quote, "I was evacuated, yes," said Prince Harry. You could say much the same about his hours in the witness box. Okay, so the point I want to make with this article is she's pointing this Hooray Harry's dumped. Now, I think this may be hi, Pris, how are you? Thanks for being here. The fact that they use "Hooray, Harry's dumped," I wanted to ask people who are in British descent, people who grew up in Britain, um, is it common there to describe someone who's a young man who's a partier all the time, going to nightclubs and lap dances? Would it be common to describe them as "Hooray, John," or "Hooray, Phil," or whatever? Because as an American, hooray, from my experience, is only used as a cheer. It's hip, hip, hooray, right? So, as an American, when I see this, I thought it was celebrating, saying, "Hooray, Harry's been dumped." But now that she's pointing out that no, because it's not a comma, they're describing Harry. They're using, obviously alliteration. They're using a description for Harry that begins with an H. So it's "Hooray, Harry has been dumped." Like partier Harry has been dumped. So I found that interesting that and I'm thinking that that's maybe why he chose this particular article, because him and Megan knew that Americans would see this and be like, "Oh, how could they be so mean to this young man and say hip hip hooray, he's been dumped? That's terrible." So that kinda went through my, mind there. Like, I don't know, but I don't know, I assume this is something that's at the time, anyways, around 2009, 10, that would be a way to describe somebody who's a partier and always having a good time, which Harry had the reputation of. He was in Las Vegas with the strippers, and he was partying everywhere all the time. So, if that's a word to use for someone who parties all the time, for sure. So the point of her article is that the fact that there's no comma after "hooray," that they are not celebrating. This is merely describing Harry's, demeanor and just saying that he was dumped. and that he went for a $2,000 vodka binge after Chelsea split. So I just thought that was interesting, and I thought that maybe they chose this article possibly to be manipulative towards the American audience to gain more sympathy for Harry. So I'm wondering, am I overthinking it? Are they that devious? Are they that clever and cunning about it? I don't know. Harry certainly isn't, but he's getting a lot of help from a lot of deep daters just saying. And one last thing before I sign off, that's all I wanted to say. And again, what's your opinion? Is this common to describe someone as a partier as a hooray, Alice or whatever? I don't know. But it's not here in America anyways, as far as I've seen. I've never heard anyone being described like that as an adjective. I've only heard hooray as a cheer. So, and also I just want to recommend this book. I love this book. It's the number one bestseller, and New York Times bestseller, and here it says British bestseller is Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. And it gives a very famous example of describing a panda. If you don't have a comma after eats, it's eats, shoots, and leaves, meaning the panda is just eating shoots or plants and leaves. But if you put a comma after eats, he eats and then he shoots someone and then he leaves. So what an astounding difference a comma can make in a sentence is an excellent book. And it makes a difference here for sure. So there is no comma. So they were not cheering that Harry was dumped, but Harry is giving the impression, calling the words hurtful. Harry said here in court about this. He said it was mean, and he felt people were laughing at him. And he said that he touched his heart with his fluttering fingers and said he was the subject or the victim of this. And to see the word used in this term is so hurtful. So he's pulling a Meghan Markle, like, poor me, they're being so mean to me. Yeah, I think that he's, you know, trying to manipulate Americans with this. That's my opinion. What do you think? All right, thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.